is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft beer and craft chocolate. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional beer writer and an advanced cicerone, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or at her website, annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Spooky season is almost here, friends, but for me, it never really ends. I love horror movies. I'm a lifelong student and lover of cinema in all genres and have even led educational classic film programs for a couple public library systems, but horror has my heart, from the silent German expressionist classics to modern self-aware slashers. The horror genre strips down our defenses and allows us to confront things within ourselves and others with a vulnerability that would be difficult to generate otherwise. There's a reason pretty much every culture throughout history has had ghost stories, legends, and other tales that interact with our universal fears as humans. Horror allows us to name what scares us, to exorcise our existential dreads, to safely come face to face with our own fragile mortality, and, for the space of a couple hours, to comfort ourselves that we aren't the ones in danger. Today we'll talk with two brewers who are just as horror-obsessed, and whose brewery exists as a tribute to the human impulse to scare ourselves silly.
And so you've also probably heard I reference all of our beers as people, and they are people to me. And it's really important for me to recognize kind of like where they come from, where they're going, what their story is, and how they're going to interact with other people in the entire world.
That's Eilise Lane, the founder and head brewer at Scarlet Lane Brewing Company. Scarlet Lane has 4 locations in and around Indianapolis, and they're all tastefully devoted to all things horror. Eilise was inspired to start brewing many years ago when she learned the brewer behind a beer she was enjoying out in Oregon was a woman. It had never occurred to Eilise there were any women brewing craft beer, and the opportunities that realization opened up for her eventually led to Scarlet Lane. Here, Eilise tells more of that story.
Scarlet Lane was kind of a distant idea and a little bit of a passion project. I was working in a corporate job. I was a very miserable person. I lived in Oregon and I started drinking a lot of craft beer. Then I went into a brewery and I asked if I could speak with the brewer, and they said, "She's not here." And it just hit me really hard because I never heard "she's not here." And so then I wouldn't stop talking about it. Got my first homebrew set on the way home. My husband pulled over the car and bought it so that I'd stop talking about it. I just started brewing at home, and my husband and my parents just saw that I actually had a light in my life again. So I quit my corporate job, went back to school for fermentation sciences, and then I started working at breweries out in Oregon. And then my husband and all of his family is here in Indiana. So we decided to come back here to start our brewery. And so Scarlet Lane was born. We moved into her building in 13, and 14 we opened. Our very first beer out was Dorian Coconut Stout. Nothing like having a stout in the summer in Indiana to kick off who you are, but that is who we are.
So how long was that space of time for when you first kind of got that itch to actually starting Scarlet Lane?
It's right around 3 to 4 years. I started getting a little excessive in my home brewing. It starts out on my countertop on my stove, and then it starts to go outside into the turkey fryer. And then all of a sudden I have stainless steel conical fermenters in my kitchen, and you cannot walk in my garage anymore. And so we lived in Eugene, Oregon. So I was bartering my beer for like other goods in the neighborhood, and people drank enough of it that it just kind of kept going.
So was it always the plan to make this a horror-themed brewery?
So it either had to be literature or horror. And when you can intermix those so perfectly, it's exactly what we needed to do. Very, very early on in the infancy of Scarlet Lane, you have the idea that you need to do a little something for everyone. So I was out on golf courses in all black with parasols, hiding from the sun because I am a vampire. And it just wasn't the right feel. It wasn't who I was. Now, you put me in a mausoleum, you put me talking about books, you put me anywhere like that, and it just feels so much more natural. And so I can talk to golfers. Don't get me wrong, golfers are people too. But I just know that like we have to kind of be who we are to really enjoy what you do.
I can definitely relate. I am a vampire as well. My wife is Mexican American, so when we go and visit her entire family and they're having these family parties, they're all out in the sun, and I'm like hiding in the one corner of shade by the garage.
100% understand.
So, Joshua, when did you join Scarlet Lane?
I lived in the next town over. I came in and just started drinking.
Still does.
Yeah, I do that on occasion. I started with the Dorian Espresso. It basically got me in the door and kept me in the door. And at the time, I was making independent movies, so I was making horror films here. And so I would go to the brewery, I'd get a growler of the beer, and then I'd start working on a new screenplay. And I'd start, I'd tag the brewery in the post or whatever, and they started replying back. And so it just started a friendship, basically. And then they screened my third movie for Halloween in 2015 as part of their double feature with Friday the 13th 3D. So it was their Halloween kind of party that year, and we were a big part of it. And so I was still juggling restaurants and working and doing the movie stuff at that time. And then the opportunity to join them came up in November. So I joined in November 2015, and I haven't been able to leave yet.
So you hadn't been brewing prior to that at all?
No experience. I came from restaurant management, and so just kitchen management mostly. And so I had my only experience with beer was drinking a bunch of it.
Very cool. That's the most important foundation of that anyway. So
yeah.
So you mentioned doing the movie screening. Let's talk about some of the ways that the horror and macabre theme is incorporated into the brewery. Eilise, what are some of the things that you do at Scarlet Lane to make that experience?
The very first thing that we did when we started Scarlet Lane is we needed a delivery vehicle. And so we bought a hearse. It's great because it keeps things cool, good suspension, nice and dark. There's a lot of weight you can put in there, some creepy hidey holes in there. And so we started driving around, delivering and doing tasters of beer out of our hearse. And then we used to throw really big Halloween parties because it's always been life. And so moving the decor out of the house into the brewery just made sense. From there, we have been able to find amazing artists, whether it's screenwriters and filmmakers or any kind of applied art where we have lots of horror, like haunt makers and statues. Oh, we have these beautiful murals over all of our locations, and we're just so lucky. We actually have mask creators that have worked with us specifically to create some of these weird things that we do. We're really, really lucky that we've met all these people along the way, and they enrich what Scarlet Lane is, and we all love it.
That's very cool. Have you started planning this year's October events?
It starts on about November 1 of the previous year. And sometimes, actually, that's fair. We take November 1 off every year. And then we start on November 2.
Are you able to share anything coming up?
So we are looking at having a theme. So we have 4 locations. We have the big brewery, which is the mothership. And then we have locations throughout Indianapolis. This year, we're looking to summon Scarlet. And so we're going to have a lot of different ways that we can summon her and summon everybody to come and enjoy this with us.
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Final Gravity issue 5 is now available in the shop on beantobarstool.com. This 5th issue of our zine telling personal, human-centered stories from the world of beer is full of great articles. Bano Segudu tells the story of the South African beer style Umkombothi, poignantly explaining its role in her culture and the importance in her family's celebrations and milestones. Maria Krugliak writes about discovering the Portuguese half pint after moving to Portugal during the COVID-19 pandemic. Amanda Bruns and Obakeng Malope discuss the water spirit Mamuhaswa and the collaboration beer they brewed in her honor. These and numerous other stories fill the 56 pages of this zine. We've expanded it and added a few features for this issue. It's full color, full of lots of beautiful photography and art. definitely check this out. It's on beantobarstool.com/shop. You can purchase this issue or subscribe, and you can always support us on Patreon and get extra perks as well. Cheers. Awesome. So is Scarlet a specific character that you've come up with for this?
Oh boy, you stepped in it. So Scarlet is my dead dog. So the entire brewery is named after my dead dog. Her ghost is everywhere.
Yeah, I think as we plan October, the thing to keep in mind is we do horror events all year long. So we're doing horror events in January all the way up to December. We do brunch with Krampus every December, you know. So yeah, October gets we put a little more energy and zip into like making October like the best it could be. But we love just being the brewery that you can go to a horror event any month of the year. And so it's really exciting.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your backgrounds in horror and why this was so natural for you both. Josh, you are a horror filmmaker. Tell me a little bit about how that got started.
My mom introduced me to film at a very young age, like films that I probably shouldn't have been watching at that young age. Like I was 7 years old watching Halloween for the first time, and it just scared the hell out of me, you know, and it just stuck, that feeling of energy and fear and just, you know, wanting to experience that over and over again. And so I just always loved movies, and middle school was when I sort of decided I wanted to be a screenwriter. And then just moving through high school, that was the focus, screenwriting. And then after high school, we just decided that we would just start making our own movies. Maybe that would be an easier path to the screenwriting dream. And so I made my first movie in 2010. And then in the following 3 years after that, I made 2 more feature films, all genre related. So my start was just basically my mom introducing me to movies I shouldn't watch at a very young age, and then me just being too stubborn to ever give up that dream. And that's where I am today still.
Are any of those earlier movies available for people to see anywhere?
My first one is not available. It was such a small movie. We made it for $1,200 and made it over a 4-day in Anderson. It's a zombie comedy. It's basically like Shaun of the Dead meets The Office. You know, it's super small, but a lot of people really had a good time with it. I actually had a blast making it. And so the second movie, The Impersonator, is still out there. And then Chopping Block is still out there. And that stars Michael Malone. And those are all pretty available. They're out there if people are curious. I know a lot of people have seen them already. So it's exciting that there was such a big support system for those early films.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's why we're friends.
Yeah. It is. Chopping Block is the one that they screened in 2015 and kind of sort of opened this whole new avenue for me to do all the beer stuff, but also have the freedom to still do all the filmmaking and writing and everything.
Him working at the brewery and becoming a brewer, that was always something that we discussed. If he's going to write a film, if he's going to go and direct it, or if he's writing a book, we always want to make sure that he has like that freedom and the ability to take off from brewing beer at Scarlet Lane and then go out there and keep chasing and pushing that dream and making sure it happens. And I get to live my dream of making beer, drinking beer, and being a creep. I want him to make beer, but I want him to like really do what he wants to do and like write these amazing books and like have these great films. It's so exciting for us.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, Josh, we'll come back to your newest movie in just a little bit here. Eilise, how about you? When did you get started with horror movies? What was your very first that you saw?
Probably for me, very first is going to go back into the classic Draculas, the Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein. And my love kind of started really with reading. And they had those little miniature classics from the Golden Books.
Mm-hmm. And I remember those.
And so I'd read the short stories of Dracula. It grew from that. And then it was films. Like my very first kiss was during Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street. First time that like I leaned in and kind of like liked a boy. We were actually watching Rosemary's Baby. We were just talking about Rosemary's Baby earlier.
That's a hell of a date movie.
Oh, right? I know. And then my love just really was like Oscar Wilde is my favorite author, and Portrait of Dorian Gray, while it isn't always seen as being a horror film, to me that's tragedy and drama and so much darkness, and that Victorian feeling of omnipresent horror in your life and the representation of it got me stuck. And that's where I started really understanding horror is emblematic of everything that we're doing and what we're feeling, but it gives us a safe space to discuss it. I feel like horror films and books and the people that enjoy them, we're a little bit more accepting and open with one another. And we can kind of tell you what's wrong without having to come out and say it if it's hard for you sometimes. And I feel like it's really rewarding and enriching for us to find like-minded people and be able to have, large discussions in horror. And then slasher films came in later for me.
What about you?
I'm not sure what the very first thing I saw was. I know I saw, this is a spoof, of course, but I saw Tremors in the theater when I was like 7, and it gave me the worst nightmares because I did not understand the irony, the humor. All I knew was there was creatures coming up from underground to eat me. So I refused to walk on anything but pavement for like a couple weeks after I saw that movie. I was just running from safe spot to safe spot. Well, I know I always hate being asked this, but I'm going to have to ask it anyway. What are some of your favorites now as adults, some favorite horror movies?
All right, I'll go first. So I'll give like 5 of my, so obviously Halloween, original John Carpenter's Halloween, probably my favorite movie of all time, just in general, favorite movie of all time. And then Scream is a close second to that. We're talking super close. Those are overlapping and have overlapped my entire life. And both those movies mean so much to me. And then Midsommar is one of my most recent favorites that I'll just watch. Nope. I can't stop thinking about Nope.
I haven't gone to see it yet.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's I'm a massive Jordan Peele fan, and I think Get Out and Us are masterpieces. But this one is even more so for me because it's this big Spielberg movie, and I'm a massive Spielberg fan. So and then speaking of his Jaws, I would say to round out, even though some people think it's not a horror movie, but I don't know.
Yeah, if you think it's horror, it's horror. I mean, if it scares you,
it's a shark eating people. That's
a really bad one.
Deep Blue Sea.
Yes, that was, yeah, Deep Blue Sea. That's my favorite.
Yeah. I got stood up in high school for a date for Deep Blue Sea, so that is why it's the worst movie.
Oh, that's rough.
This turned into a therapy session. Okay.
You guys stood up for the date and like you didn't even get the satisfaction of a good movie to watch by yourself.
Yeah. But I got the good LL Cool J rap song about sharks, so that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, that is still dope. Okay, don't. Like something that needs to be focused on way more often than it is. So like, there's some good music.
Speaking of horror musical, though, how about Anna and the Apocalypse? Have you guys seen Anna and the Apocalypse yet?
Not yet.
Oh,
but I keep hearing that I need to.
You have to watch it. The entire family now does like sing-alongs to it. So what are your favorites, Eilise?
So, okay, this is a really hard question for me because I am so all over the place. Aliens has this really important place for me, and it has like a special time in my life. My dad and I'd fly out to LA to see the opening of any Alien film or AVP in, the later days.
You down with AVP?
Yeah, me. Also, speaking of, watched Prey this weekend.
It's fantastic.
I am going to watch it this week.
Oh, it is so good. 100% recommend that. But then I have like my really true love where you go into something like Portrait of Dorian Gray, the original where Angela Lansbury is Sybil Vane and the entire thing is black and white, except at the end photo is in color. That's beautiful. Wuthering Heights, while you think it's a dramatic love story, it is so monstrous and evil and dark. And I watched all these, The Bride of Frankenstein and Dracula. I think as a little kid, I was wearing, a vampire cape with the widow's peak drawn in way more than what was normal for other little girls. And I loved those. It was so strong for people to be able to create those. And then you get a little further in and like Scream is a franchise that is really important. I think it just hit at the right time and it's smart. And there's humor, but there's also like a really good discussion in there. Going a little bit more, The Descent is a big one for me. Oh man, that just like your heart gets twisted in that, and I love it. I love that. And then this is a dicey one. I'm gonna say it. Hard Candy is one for me. That's a really great way to like turn on someone that's really screwed you up, and I appreciate that. And then oh wait, that sounded a little too dark, didn't it? I own a lot of coffins
that
and a
movie
hearse.
just turned into a horror movie for sure.
Let's talk about the range of beers at Scarlet Lane then. Let's start with Dorian. That was kind of the heart and soul of the brewery. How did that get started? And tell us a little bit about the beer.
Dorian is an entire range of stouts. And when we were starting the brewery, I wanted to have as many stouts as humanly possible because I find that you can layer and create so much within them. And it was like, wait, it's Indiana in the summer, probably shouldn't have 18 stouts. So I said, let's create Dorian. He's always changing. Everything is always different. And you don't know what's going on the back end to really change who he is and what's creating that. And so the very first one was Dorian Coconut Stout. Hand toast 400 pounds of coconut every single batch. It is a lot of work, but
you can't
really
get toasted coconut.
It doesn't taste right.
We ask her that every year after 4 hours into the process. There's got to be an easier way, right?
We buy like 100-pound bags of all natural coconut, and then we literally put it on sheets, and we have to toast to an exact color so that it creates the right flavor profile for us. And then we've been lucky. Dorian Espresso Stout is a standard for us, and we work with Tinker Coffee, a roaster here in Indianapolis. Always great to work with a lot of different people locally that are passionate about what they do. And then Dorian, like I said, he's an ever-changing guy. And so we have this big event in March called Dorian Days. That means we just create all the weird stuff that maybe doesn't work or maybe does. So I've done fish beers. Mm-hmm. You've done
S'morian, Dorian S'morian.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
We've had Thai chili,
blueberry. I mean, blueberry. Anything from basic stuff to like blueberry to like oyster, like fish oyster stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's a fun day, and it really lets not only Eilise and I experiment with some stuff that we want to do. We now have 2 people in the brewery working under us, Nick and Rachel, and it also gives them the chance to create some of these ideas that they have and get them involved in that process. Our list started here when it was just Eilise and I, Dorian Days beer that we had created, and now we got to print it out every year. We plan it out, and we're running out. We were just talking about it the other day at the bar, and we're all like, we don't even know what we can do at this. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with that one.
It's cool that we come at it with different perspectives. Like I made a curry Dorian because why not? And then Elliot did like a maple bake, or no, that was Rachel, did the maple bacon. Yeah. That was about 15 ingredients to create bacon without putting bacon in there. It's like really, really fun. It's a way for us to be creative. And I think for the beer series, having Dorian, he allows us to kind of change things and play and constantly be creative. I think Oscar Wilde would be proud of that.
And it gives us an opportunity to introduce possible rotating options of Dorian, like the Millionaire. We did the Dorian Millionaire a few years back, which is sea salt caramel, and it did so well that now it's just on the rotating tap.
Yeah, that sounds great. What are some of the other beers that define Scarlet Lane?
I think we have like multiple sides here on things that define Scarlet Lane. So I am a very strange brewer in the fact that ideas for beers come to me, and this is not an exaggeration, from a dream or from reading or thinking about a character. And so someone that's special to me is Olga, because I had this dream about this woman. She's standing on the snowy plain and she's so regal, and I can see her like chestnut hair flowing. And there's so much power and strength, and her eyes are just filled with this love, but this hardness. And I looked down in the dream through her eyes, and she's watching a city burn. And so it took me understanding like what this dream is. And I wake up and I start writing notes and like delving into what this is. And she happened to be an empress, and her husband was taken from her. And so she sought to completely destroy those who came for her. And so for me to explain who she was and doing that with ingredients, using the roast and finding a way to have that caramel, that sweet, that love. She's an imperial stout. And so I needed that alcohol, that burn, that fire, that passion. And the rye is like this this really big spice. And I could see that just like as her backbone, it was just so much strength in her. And it was so interesting to kind of fulfill this dream and create her. And those come to fruition for me. It's just really, really rewarding. And when like I can talk to someone and tell them about who it is, it's really, really important to me. And I get very, very animated about it. And I just love it.
Do you have that kind of backstory for most of your beers?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Why don't you put that out? I mean, you put out a little story series of those.
That's been discussed. You know, this guy writes.
Sometimes. No, to dabble.
And so you've also probably heard I reference all of our beers as people, and they are people to me. And it's really important for me to recognize kind of like where they come from, where they're going, what their story is, and how they're going to interact with other people in the entire world.
I come in and I'm like, you should hear my dream last night. I opened a door and then there was another door and I was just running through doors the whole time. It was so crazy. And then she'd be like, you should hear my dream. And it's that pitch. Wow. That's not doors.
But then we also have other beers like Sammy Terry Kölsch, where we're very lucky. Sammy Terry is a TV legend horror host. And so we're able to work with Sammy and actually flesh out the story of how this beer was created, with Sammy being an eternal being. And so it's really fun to do things like that where we get to work with others. And then we have the WNUF beer coming out.
Yeah, did you see the WNUF Halloween special?
I did not.
You should watch it. It's a staple every year around Halloween. It's a really fun, sort of makes it seem like it's an old Halloween special that you would have watched live on TV in the 80s, and some tomfoolery happens, but they're doing a sequel that comes out this year, and so we just brewed a beer for it. We're having a Labor Day weekend. We're actually screening it at the brewery. That's going to be the only Indianapolis screening, but we did a pumpkin stout for that one, and we just can't seem to just do let's just do a pale ale with no story. Everything's got to have it's all got to tie in somehow or some way, which is great.
I love that. So Josh, you have a new movie coming out. Tell us about Glorious.
Yes. So Glorious is a long time coming, no pun intended, but it is, this project came to me in 2017, and it was just a concept. Me and my buddy, Todd Rigney, who's out of Kentucky, he's a writer. We had tried to make a different one of his projects come to life, and it was just too big. We weren't able to make it work. So I said, what else do you have? And so he goes, well, I have a story about a guy who gets trapped in a bathroom with a Lovecraftian god. And I was like, well, that's obvious. Tell me more. And he's like, well, the Lovecraftian god's a glory hole. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that one.
Yeah.
That seems doable. Again, no pun intended. So we decided we'd start working on that one. And over a few month period, we got a script together, and it was really fun, really cool. And it was going to be my fourth movie. We were going to actually shoot it in the back of the brewery. We were going to build the set, everything. We had the whole thing planned out, cast. It was really exciting. And then as things just kind of fall apart, it fell apart at the end of 2017, fell apart again in 2018. The end of 2019, I emailed the actor who was attached, Nick Tucci from You're Next, and I said, hey, I turn in this book, then we're going to do this movie in March 2019. And then he passed away. And so that was the last time the movie fell apart. And I was just like, I'm sort of, I think I've gone on my journey with this movie as far as I can take it, as trying to make it myself, and us trying to make it here. A few months after that was when the pandemic started. And I had a friend, Jason Goldberg, who's a producing friend. He was stuck at home. He has a small child. So he said, if anybody has any scripts you want read, I am going crazy at home. I just want to read some scripts. So I sent him Old Glory, which is what it was called at the time. 2 days later, he said he had a friend that he thought would be really good to bring it to life. And that friend happened to be Rebecca McKendry, who's I've been a massive fan of for years and years. And we were on a Zoom 2 days after that, and she was like, I would love to direct this. Where are we at with it? I said the same story.
It seems kind of perfect for her.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I've always said, if I didn't direct this movie, she's the perfect person to direct this movie. But if she was not directing this movie, I would still be trying to figure out how to make this movie, probably because that's just how much of a fan I was of hers, and how perfect it felt that she could bring it to life. And so, yeah, we spent the entire rest of 2020 from March on trying to get the script sort of more in tune with what she saw it as, and casting and trying to get into production. But, it's in the heat of the pandemic, so there's so many protocols. And it's a movie that's perfect for the pandemic because there's only 2 people in a bathroom, and one of those people are not on screen. So, it's about the most perfect project you could ask for. And then finally in 2021, it came together with casting, with location, with everything, and they made it down in Jackson, Mississippi, and it turned out so fun and so good, and I'm so happy with it. And it's Ryan Quanten from True Blood, J.K. Simmons.
You've got, he's one of the most recognizable voices in movies, I feel like. So that's perfect for the off screen.
Yeah, he's really great. Their banter is just, I can't imagine it with any other people, and I can't imagine it with a different team at all, because it turned out so great.
It's phenomenal. And what's been really great is watching his growth with it, and like reading what he wrote back in 2017, and thinking, all right, how are we going to get this done? And then seeing it finally, and I can still hear his voice saying some of the things in there. I can hear his tone, his humor, his like dark questions that are ever present. But Rebecca also lent kind of, a feminine voice to it, saying, wait, let's look at this and maybe tweak that a little bit. And it really is a great film. It's so exciting.
Eilise, what does it mean to have this kind of, not under the umbrella of Scarlet Lane, but you have a brewer from the brewery that has made this horror movie now?
It's cool as shit. It's amazing. That's something that is just so great, is that anybody working at Scarlet Lane, we want them to always do what they love. And seeing them out there and creating and being part of what they love, and whatever media or format that is. But it's really lucky. Josh and I brew together. There are days we're together 15 hours. There are weeks where we're together 7 days. There have been months where we see each other more than our spouses. And to see him really live in this moment and have something so spectacular happen, it's just really amazing. And I can't stop gushing, and it just makes me really happy. I'm so proud of him, and I'm so happy we can help celebrate. We've done weird things to celebrate along the way.
Yeah, it's been a process. The past 6 months have been a little hectic because there are so many projects in the work, and I'm having so many meetings. So I'm literally having to brew a beer and then jump down from the brew deck and go on a Zoom with producers and talk, and then go right back to brew. Yeah, or like I'm sorry, Eilise, I have to take this call. This is Hollywood. And really, it's just my mom. And I say, thanks for making me look cool. But,
that's true too.
I look at it more, we're all great friends, but it is a partnership, because their wins are my wins. And I feel equally as my wins are their wins. And we're all, as a company, celebrating this movie coming out. We brewed an entire beer just for this movie and for the release of this movie, and it's a blue beer, so it's cosmic, it's wild, but
nice.
These are the things that we do, and to prop each other up, and it's really, so right now they're propping me up a little, and that's great, and that's fun, and I can't wait to see who we get to prop up next.
Well, by the time this episode comes out in September, Glorious will be available for everyone to see. That's on Shudder, right?
Yes, it'll be on Shudder. Yes,
that is fantastic.
August 18th.
Yeah.
So we have the big LA premiere is this week. Then we screen at Indianapolis on Tuesday, and then the movie comes out Thursday, along with the beer comes out at all 4 locations.
That is super cool. I have a good friend who lives out in Nevada. We've been close friends since I was a teenager, and every week, we started this at the beginning of the pandemic, but we've kept it on since then. Every week, if we can, on Monday night, we watch a horror movie together. We sync it up, and then we live text each other as we're watching. So we're planning in 2 weeks to do that with Glorious. So
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a fun movie to watch with people. It's a fun movie to watch by yourself, but it's so much fun to watch with a crowd, watch with like a small group of friends, just because it's so silly and so much fun and so ridiculous.
I can't wait. Well, the last question I always ask is what story your brewery is telling. What is the story of Scarlet Lane? What are you telling with your beer?
The story of our brewery is we're a collection of stories. I mean, that's who we are. It's what we are and it's what we create. And every person that comes in adds to that story. It's a new chapter and it's a new character. And every single one of our beers are that as well. And we hope that we can represent a lot of different people, a lot of different times, and a lot of different emotional capacities without people always being hit and saying, wait, what? You can enjoy a beer, but you can have a really deep discussion around it. And it's really great to have a place where you can do something like that. It's that science meets art and it creates a different community. And we're just really lucky that Scarlet Lane has always had those chapters available to us.
When are we going to get a horror movie set at Scarlet Lane?
We've been asked a lot. I've been asked that a lot too. It's our favorite thing is when somebody comes in and say, "Have you ever thought about doing a movie where you brew somebody, where you put somebody in the mash, or And I'm like, no, we've never thought about that because but
we would never do anything like that.
The thing to me is, it's got to be more of the idea of the brewery. There's something either just not our brewery in general, but there's something so non-cinematic about breweries. There's just it's hard to tell a fun story that you can't. You got to include a lot of the pieces of the places, and so it's really. I've talked about it a lot with some people about doing an anthology because I think that's the way to go about doing it. Doing a like a creep show-esque type thing at a brewery, because I think much like Eilise just said, it's everything that happens at a brewery is a piece of the story, and so it's hard to do. I know what you did last summer at a brewery,
right.
But it's easier to do a creep show in that brewery setting. So it's just finding the right people
or a trick or treat kind of
thing. Yeah, or a trick or treat, that sort of thing. So no, it's definitely it's always on our minds to do something like that, and it'll get figured out one day. But yeah,
I mean, and we tell each other stories of how to kill people, theoretically, how to kill people all the time in the brewery.
Yeah.
That struck me as the perfect place to end that interview. I love Eilise and Josh's playfully dark senses of humor and how central the idea of story is to everything they do at Scarlet Lane. Since we conducted this interview, my friend and I have watched Glorious and had a blast with it. The concept is obviously kind of bonkers, but the limits of the setting, a rest stop bathroom, keep everything contained and allow the sarcastic humor, visual gross-outs, and narrative twists to shine. It's fun and silly, but also explores toxic masculinity in unique ways, and, as all good horror does, brings us face to face with mortality. I'll put the link to the Scarlet Lane website in the show notes, as well as to Glorious on Shudder, so you can check it out. If you're in Indy, check out one of Scarlet Lane's locations. Thanks again to Eilise and Josh for coming on the show, and to all of you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Bean to Barstool.